Now, excuse me, right off the get go here, got a frog in my throat. But episode 153 dwells on exposing evil. Ephesians 5:11, the Apostle Paul wrote, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful work of darkness, but rather expose them. This is part 4 of the unofficial appellate court where the righteous gets to rule correctly. The non-believers, not so much. This will focus in part on the apparent criminal element infecting the Clark County judicial system. As I look back on my first experience with the Clark County judicial system in January of 2023, it became obvious that the scales of justice were not balanced. Now, I said my first experience happened in 2023 January. I've had more since then, and so many that the same players, I feel like they should be invited to my family reunion. Now, I don't have the actual film of the transcript of the initial hearing. And I'm well aware of the fact that the court could alter or even lose them. But here is the truth. On January 11th, 2022, I was served with papers on charges of being a respondent in a vulnerable adult protection order. The papers were filed by Carla Mager, and they were on behalf of her mother without the knowledge or approval of the mother. Not unlike 6 days earlier when she embezzled $45,000 from her mother's account. Well, the court kind of swept that under the carpet. Yet they made a big deal over money that Joanne Kemper deposited in a joint account with the purpose of paying bills as we were getting married, or had plans thereof, till the court stepped in. But this was all done while Joanne Kemper was in early stages of dementia, still capable of making decisions. Now, this was according to her doctor. And then her doctor added, maybe not 6 months from now. So to accelerate the condition, they placed Joanne Kemper in a solitary confinement situation where she was shut off from human contact. We were both confused, trusting in true justice, only finding out it wasn't available in Clark County. Joanne Kemper and I both tried to get an attorney to represent us. We could never get past the lady answering the phone. It turned out the courts would appoint or recommend attorneys that were under their control. I wish they would please challenge me on this. I have their written orders where everything was designed to keep Joanne Kemper from knowing the truth. The attorney who filed the claim against me was Grant Brower. He informed the judge that they, meaning Carl Mauger and himself, were not comfortable with me being reliable enough to take Joanne Kemper to the hospital if needed. Now, they failed to mention that in June of 2011, I was preparing a trip back to my hometown, to 2,600 miles away, to attend a class reunion. Prior to my leaving, Joanne Kemper broke her kneecap. I canceled my trip. I took Joanne to the hospital and stayed with her throughout the ordeal, acting as her caregiver. Oh, her daughter dropped off a wheelchair in the front driveway, stuck her head in the door and says, "I brought you a wheelchair," and took off. She only stopped by to visit her mother one time. Did I mention that Carla Mauger lived less than a mile from her mother? Throughout our history of over a decade, Joanne Kemper and I designed our lives around helping each other. Of course, the experienced Grant Brower timed his statement just moments prior to the judge making her decision and allowed me no time to respond. This appears to be a habit of the court. After Mr. Brower's statement, Judge Nancy Redsenis looked at me with fire in her eyes. And then she informed me I was not going to like her decision. That should have been a red flag number one. I was given 24 hours to remove myself from the house. I responded with, "Who's going to take care of Joanne?" At this time, Joanne spoke up and says, "I do not want my daughter or my grandson to be my caregiver." Now, the judge promised Joanne they would find somebody other than her daughter and grandson. This first hearing consisted of a document filed against me that was filled with obvious lies and ended up with a lie from the judge herself. In addressing the Jewish religious leaders of their time, lawyers, in John 8:44, Jesus said, "You are the father, the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it." Therefore, when a judicial system pays more credence to a lie than the truth, it becomes a Satan-created den of iniquity. It starts with a lie and develops into a criminal element embodied and obscure from anyone seeking justice. In Clark County, Washington, there is evidence that injustice and prejudice have contaminated the court, and that was done through the appointed individuals who were assigned to the courts. Also, police officers who should be unbiased. Also, attorneys who are sworn to represent their clients. magistrates that should rule and make actual justice a fact, leaving prejudice out of the equation. The real sin was the treatment of Joanne Kemper, being placed in a solitary confinement without any true caregiver, and it has been going on for over 3 years now. The court-appointed guardian, Stacy Bollinger, has the beneficiary, Joanne Kemper, paying rent in her own house that she has no mortgage on. The guardian has moved in an unwelcome squatter who pays nothing. Let that sink in a minute. She pays rent on a house she owns free and clear, and the courts send somebody in and they pay nothing. Where's the justice? To add insult to injury, because he was given the title caregiver, Joanne Kemper has to pay him $100 per day when he accomplishes very little of the required duties of a caregiver. Now, if you include the free room and board and the salary, Reese Minor receives over $50,000 a year. Keep in mind, he has never held an actual job in his life. He has absolutely no experience. This is very much akin to an apprentice plumber making more than a plumber. Not only does Reese Minor do nothing to earn this handsome salary, but he converted her once beautiful house into a one-person prison. The court records will show that from the start, Reese Minor was not an acceptable caregiver. The court records will show that Joanne Kemper has the right to change caregivers. Wasted words on a piece of paper. The court declares Joanne Kemper has a right to allow who comes into her home. More wasted words on a sheet of paper. Since the courts do not require any feasible accountability, the guardian can go out and hire individuals to do some of the workload that should have been done by the caregiver. Is that not a form of double billing? Speaking of double billing, how does the attorney for Stacy Bollinger get by with double billing Joanne Kemper to the tune of almost $1,000? One of the items on the billing was watching my podcast. He charged her for the same thing twice on 2 different entries and on 2 different pages. Presumably, hoping nobody'd notice. Well, I noticed, and I notified the judge. And the judge approved it anyway. But how does Stacy Bollinger's attorney get to charge Joanne Kemper for anything. He has done nothing in behalf of Joanne Kemper except be a part of making her life miserable. Why is it that Stacy Bollinger, through her attorney, Charles Isley, have gone out of their way to not only make Joanne Kemper's life miserable, but mine also? Guardians have a fiduciary duty to act on the behalf of those they are put in charge of, and they must agree to always act in the best interest. A fiduciary duty is a legal obligation typically owed by a person or entity, the fiduciary, in this case, Stacy Bollinger, to act in the best interest of the beneficiary, Joanne Kemper. This duty involves exercising special care, loyalty, and in good faith in managing the beneficiary's affairs. And a breach can lead to legal consequences. That is not going to happen in Clark County. The records will show that Stacy Bollinger has never acted in the best interest of Joanne Kemper. According to the court record, Stacy Bollinger is obligated to give Joanne Kemper personal and incidental allowances up to $500 a month. Joanne Kemper has never received a penny in that allowance. So $500 a month prorated back to when Stacy Bollinger becomes the guardian would amount to over $17,000 of Joanne's own money. That would allow Joanne Kemper to hire an attorney who will actually work in her behalf. You know the judge is not going to let her find an attorney that would correct all these errors. But if Stacy Bollinger can backdate the salary of Reese Minor, then it's only fair the same be offered Joanne. Courts would never go for that either. It's a sensible thing. They don't believe in the welfare of Joanne Kemper. This was proven by Jill Sassler in a related case. When asked, why won't you let Joanne be happy? She replied, we have to look at things in a different light. Well, evil has no light. We pray that the light shines on the leaders in Washington, D.C. They have the power to correct travesties like this. If they fail us, we know who will not. His name is Jesus. Thank you all.
You say one day your rockets will start raining down, and soon not even one Israeli can be found. Well, remember that God said they're the apple of his eye. Do you really think that God would tell a lie? Now there's a spy in the sky and he's a Jew. So be careful what you say and what you do. When you're making all your plans, think 'em through. 'Cause there's a spy in the sky and he's a Jew. Goliath was a giant and David was so small, but the difference in their sizes mattered not at all. 'Cause David had the one who made the whole world on his side, and the Philistines all knew it when Goliath died. Yeah, there's a spy in the sky, and he's a Jew. So be careful what you say and what you do. When you're making all your plans, think 'em through. 'Cause there's a spy in the sky, and he's a Jew. When you're planning how you're gonna kill off all the Jews, remember all the other ones who tried it too. Like Haman, who was hanged instead of Mordecai, and Hitler, who crawled in a hole and took his life. Yeah, there's a spy in the sky, and he's a Jew. So be careful what you say and what you do. When you're making all your plans, think 'em through. 'Cause there's a spy in the sky, and he's a Jew. Yeah, there's a spy in the sky, and he's a Jew.